Good evening and welcome to the Beaverton School District December 14th School Board Business Meeting. We're welcome to have you here this evening. We're going to start off by calling for attendance for the board members. So if you could just say here or present when I call your name. Ann Bryan.
Here.
Susan Greenberg.
Here.
Leanne Larson.
Here.
Eric Simpson.
Here.
Donna Tyner.
Here.
Vice Chair Tom Collette.
Here.
And Becky Timchuk in attendance this evening. Board members, are there any changes to the agenda this evening? Seeing none, we'll proceed with our first order of business. And joining us this evening with comments is our BEA President, Beaverton Education Association President, Sarah Schmidt. Sarah, welcome.
Good evening, Superintendent Grotting, Chair Timchuk, and members of the board. Welcome to your last board meeting of 2020. I'm sure we're all happy about that. I've just said it before, and I'm going to keep saying it. Educators have been absolute heroes this year and have been going above and beyond to stay connected with our students during CDL. And as we continue through this pandemic, there's no doubt that it's going to continue to take a workforce of dedicated, highly qualified, and amazing educators to continue to provide excellent learning experiences for our students, however that is going to look. As you know, we're in the midst of bargaining a cost of living adjustment for this school year, and BEA leaders and members are hopeful that we can come to an agreement in a timely fashion. We find ourselves negotiating fair compensation while also working on some agreements about working conditions and protections that are going to keep both staff and students safe during this pandemic. And we've heard from many leaders in the district that the work of staff is appreciated. And we're hoping that BSD leaders will demonstrate through actions that you recognize the incredible value of your employees. I want to talk just for a moment about one of the items on your agenda tonight. And as a union of professional educators, BEA is committed to creating safe, welcoming, and compassionate classroom communities or virtual classroom communities where students feel empowered to be themselves. We fully support the state's All Students Belong OAR and also the implementation of this work in Beaverton. As you all discussed the All Students Belong policy as a board, I hope that you'll keep in mind the courageous students from Westview High School who came to this board in December of 2018, and the many students and families since then to demand a hate speech policy in the district and also protocols that will help make schools a safer place. Taking action now is great, but I want to make sure that we're acknowledging that not taking action until now has resulted in the active marginalization of students and staff and has perpetuated unsafe learning environments for students and working environments for staff. So I think we're all in agreement that incidents of bias, whether based on a person's race, gender identity, sexuality, disability, or any other factor, has no place in our schools or in our community. And I'm appreciative of this board to have such a strong equity policy. And in order for us to live up to those statements, this accountability work is the right place to focus our attention and intention. So thank you for taking this on now and making this a priority of the board. And you have our full support. BEA leaders are willing partners in this work, and we hope to collaborate with you on the implementation process. Lastly, as I said earlier, I know we're all going to be excited to put 2020 behind us, but I'm hoping that we can work together. 2021 is not going to be easier. We have a long road ahead of us, and we really need to be making good choices. I said this last month as we were heading into the Thanksgiving break, and now as we head into our winter break, I just want to urge everyone in our community to take the COVID-19 virus seriously, make good choices, help us curb the spread, because educators want to be back in classrooms with students, but only when it is safe for everyone. So I will look forward to seeing you all in the new year. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Sarah, very much for your comments and for joining us this evening. Hope you have a great winter break.
Thanks.
Next, we will have representation from we love having our students with us. And we have 4 students with us from the Student Advisory Committee. And I am going to kick it off to one of our co-presidents, Neil, first, and then I'll let you call on some of your fellow board members. But thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. So yeah, I'll go first. Just introduce myself. I'm Neil. I'm a junior at Westview, and I'm the co-president, one of the co-presidents at BSAC here. And just some stuff we've been discussing at BSAC. We've been kind of narrowing down our focus for what we want to talk about this year. And the 2 things we came down to were like improving student mental health, and then the school security and school resource officers, talking about that. So I was more involved in the mental health work, so that's what I'll be talking about. And we were basically talking about how many students' mental health have suffered, especially during the pandemic, like with remote learning and like missing that kind of social interaction. So, trying to compile like resources for students, and like I know Westview has done this with like the wellness room, and just trying to match that across other areas, and also just trying to reduce the stigma of mental health is another big goal for us. So yeah, I'll go ahead and hand it off to Jonah now.
Yeah, hi. So my name is Jonah Patterson. I'm the secretary of BSAC this year. And I was more involved in the group that was going to talk about SROs this year in school security. And we've come up with a bit of a tentative plan for how we're going to go about this. But our goal this year is to really, at the very least, start a conversation about SROs, surrounding SROs, and how we're going to bring more students than just the 4 of us into this conversation. And so our plan for now is we're going to try to get some research on SROs and how they work not only in this district, but across the country by around the end of December. And then in January and February, our plan is to actually start asking students in schools their opinion on various SRO policies or their opinion on SROs, right? Because we want to get as many voices involved as possible, especially students of color and other marginalized students. And then after we do that, our goal is to really start a conversation around SROs. So we are planning to talk to some SROs, in person, obviously over Zoom for the time being, and get some students involved with that too if they want to come. It could be a public event. And then also ultimately look at what reforms can be made going forward as far as SROs go. As I said during the last meeting which I attended, we have a good opportunity this year because we're not in the building to reform how we look at building security and SROs in general. And so I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Riley and I'm the head of social media for this year. And along with what Neil and Jonah were just talking about, we are also relaunching our Humans of BSD campaign. And this takes place on Instagram. And what this is the members of BSAC reach out to students in their specific schools who demonstrate exceptional qualities of students in the Beaverton School District. We then write a bio and find some quotes from them, and then we highlight them on our Humans of BSD Instagram. So this is a really great way to try to keep kids connected during this time, meet new people, see the amazing things that students are doing during virtual learning. So we are very excited to be restarting this as well. Next, I'll hand it off to Miriam, our other co-president.
Hi, I'm Miriam and I'm the other co-president. Again, we divided the committee into 2 different projects to work as it's the most efficient way for us to conquer all of our goals this school year. Neil and Jonah described the 2 different important topics that we're working on, but all groups are creating different action steps, goals, and of course a timeline to organize ourselves. That's what we worked on last meeting. And we really look forward to working with the school board on all of these matters. And we'll continue to update you with our progress very soon on our projects relating to mental health and school security.
That's great. I thank you all for being here on a school night. We hope that you all have a great winter break. But board members, do you have any questions of our great students while they're here and we have them and before they get back to their schoolwork?
Just a quick question. First of all, I wanted to thank them, but I wanted to find out, I didn't hear where all of them went to school.
Who wants to start?
I could. Hi, I go to ISB, the International School of Beaverton.
Yeah, and I go to Westview High School.
I go to Mountainside.
And I go to Southwich High School.
We have a great group of students and they're very active and very articulate, and it's just a joy to be able to meet with them once a month. And we're really appreciative that Superintendent Grotting is also able to join us, and Dr. Franco, and it's just a great way to get student input. But thank you all for joining us tonight. We really appreciated having you here with us. So thank you. Next up, we have public participation, and the way we've been doing this during the Zoom meetings is we open this up to public comment on Thursday and keep it open until this afternoon. And people provide us comments that have all been sent to us as board members so that we can read them in depth and they become part of the public record. This last few days, we received 10 public comments, and just a quick summary. It's everything from looking closer at CDL and it not working for all of our families and how we can better improve it, support of the middle school boundaries, calling on us. We have a teacher calling on us to look again at our SRO policies and removing them from our schools. Then we also have a lot of folks that are several, I should say not a lot, several that are asking us to look at how to get our students back in person and return to school. So we thank everyone for taking the time to share their public comment with us, and we will be reaching out with the proper staff with the comment back. But thank you so much for taking the time to share your comments with us. So now we will start our reports for the evening, and first up is comments from Superintendent Grotting.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Timchuk, members of the board, staff, students, and community members. First thing I want to talk about is a thing that's probably foremost on our mind, and that's comprehensive distance learning, our limited in-person instruction, and our return to school. And our district, as of now, will remain in comprehensive distance learning at least through the first semester due to the current metrics that currently exist in Washington and Multnomah County. Prior to the end of the semester, this will be on or about January 13th, we will reevaluate the metrics and any new and additional guidance from ODE, OHA, Oregon Health Authority, and our governor to identify our plans for the next quarter. And just to let folks know, our next quarter ends on April 15th. Our current intentions to return to any significant in-person instruction remains going from quarter to quarter to allow both students, families, and staff to prepare and plan. We continue to work with stakeholders regarding our return to school, and vaccination protocols, timelines, testing opportunities that are going to exist in the future. And later tonight, you will hear more in detail about our efforts from our teaching and learning operations team. There is a great desire to get our students back and our staff back. I've been on several Zooms. Our teachers desperately desire to be back in the classroom with their students. Our students desperately desire to be back in the classroom with their teachers. But we want to also make sure that we do this safely. And as you know, and as you're hearing in talking with our county health officials, the predictions for COVID-19 positive testing will continue to increase probably through mid or late January. There's some great hope out there with vaccinations coming. I want you to know that the current vaccinations that will exist and that are coming in the future are to assist those students or from ages 17 and above. There's currently no vaccine that will be available, probably at least till this time next year, for students, younger students up to the age of 16. So our plan is to definitely be able to vaccinate our teachers. Our governor has prioritized educators to a 1B status. So it's really just going to depend on the availability of the vaccination as we go forward. I also want to make something that's very clear, that just being vaccinated, you're still able to transmit COVID-19. It stops you from getting COVID-19, but it does, just because you're vaccinated, folks who are vaccinated are able to transmit the disease. We're all working hard and we really yearn for the day that we can come back with our students. We know that some of our most vulnerable and marginalized students are really suffering out there, as well as their families. Activities in athletics, basically the Oregon Health Authority has taken over the processes and procedures that guide Oregon high school athletics. And currently we are just offering outdoor activities as far as practices. The OSA did recently, in conjunction with OHA, has allowed formal practices to begin on February 22nd currently, assuming there's not a turn for the worse in metrics. And also will be allowing contests to begin as of March 1st. Those will only be for certain sports. And right now, no contact sports are being allowed. Later today, you'll hear from Mike Schofield, our Assistant Superintendent over our business services, talk about the budget. And I just want to say a big shout out to all of our staff, classified staff. We've had classified staff who've been furloughed, but our certified staff, our administrators, we have been building our ending cash balance in preparation for the next biennium and in preparation of meeting what we know will be some COVID-19 requirements that we'll have to do, as well as some students that will be coming to us that we know that will need some additional help interventions. As you know, the governor passed a proposed budget of $9.1 billion for K-12 education, with full funding for Measure 98 and almost full funding for the Student Investment Act. So we're excited about that. I know that our CFO will be talking to you about a current service level. We were estimating we would need at least, we're there at 9.1, we would need around 10. I think he's been doing some work and he's going to share a little bit with you, possibly what that'll look like. Also, I want to talk about COVID-19 liability insurance legislation, and we've been working with OSBA, our legislators, and other stakeholders to encourage our legislators to provide protections for school districts regarding COVID-19 liability claims. And David Williams has been instrumental in working from the district with many stakeholders and to make sure that we are protected from various claims that may arise from COVID-19. And we did receive some good news from the Oregon Department of Education regarding our Student Investment Act plans. As you know, we did a lot of work, put a lot of work into engaging our community and other stakeholders in preparing and submitting our Student Investment Act plan. Because we've been in COVID-19, the Department of Education has determined that we will not have to go through that entire process this coming year, that we'll be able to do quarterly reports. And if we want to make some adjustments in the plan, we'll be able to do that, but we will not have to go through the entire plan. So there were, along with Beaverton, many school districts were relieved with that because, as you know, we only received about 1/3 of the funding. And we're hoping with full funding that we'll be able to do a lot of that social and emotional work that we were planning on. Finally, I just want to talk to you about, receive some late news regarding our early childhood education, and a big shout out to Kayla Bell and her crew. The Early Learning Division has awarded the Beaverton School District a grant of about $250,000 for a preschool promise grant, in which we will open up a preschool at Merlot Station. In the Merlot Station, that grant will help serve students from the El Monica area and Beaver Acres catchment areas. And this will be some of our most vulnerable and marginalized students. In addition, we do have plans, and we're hoping our budget will accommodate it. We have plans to also open 2 new preschools at McKinley and Fir Grove. Once again, 2 of our more economically impacted schools. We know that when these students come into our kindergarten and start coming back to our schools, we're going to have some students with some significant needs. We believe that preschool is really a way to get at some of those equity issues that we're talking about as we go forward. If we were able to, along with the preschool promise, and if we did open McKinley and Fir Grove, we would have 20 preschool classes in our district, and on the way to, as we go down, prioritizing our most vulnerable students. So big shout out there. That's all I have, Madam Chair and board.
Thank you, Superintendent Grotting. Does the board members have any questions for the superintendent on his report or anything they? All right, we'll move on to the next report, and that is our financial update. And Mr. Schofield, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Timchuk, members of the board, Superintendent Grotting. You have before you your financial report through the end of November. I won't spend a ton of time on it tonight since we just went over this a couple of weeks ago. So what you'll see is a little improvement in fund balance, as Superintendent Grotting mentioned. Just under $77 million is our projection at this point, which is about 13.9% of revenue. So saving some money, and that fund balance is going up. As Superintendent Grotting mentioned, we are working hard to establish a current service level budget, and we'll have more information for you on that at a future meeting. If you have any questions, happy to take them.
Any questions for Mike? What was the, Mike, I'll just ask, what was the last, Superintendent Grotting kind of alluded to this a little bit. What are you projecting that we may need for our current service level?
Yeah, based on what we're looking at right now, it's in the range of about 9.7 billion that we would think would be closer to a current service level budget. As you know, our budget moved around quite a bit since last March. So getting all of those, we made some reductions in July. We've had furloughs. We've had all kinds of goings on in the budget, but we think it's probably in the $9.7 billion range.
And remind us again what the governor's budget proposed?
9.1.
So do we know yet what that might mean? What kind of expenditures that we may need to keep in hand here in the district with the differences in the 2 numbers?
That's a good question, Chair Timchuk. So we're going to face 2 issues as we begin to build our budget for the 21-22 school year. The first one will be enrollment and what our enrollment will be. I got some preliminary numbers last week that would suggest we will have some shortfall in terms of enrollment. And because of that, we will have some reductions in staff due to that. So that's one issue, is staffing that's primarily just based on enrollment. The second issue is the 9.1 versus the 9.7, right? In terms of how that gets us to a current service level. Right now, we are hoping that our fund balance and by building our fund balance, that will help us to bridge that gap. But again, remember, as we look to future years, again, if our expenditures on an annual basis are rising faster than our revenue, we will continue to have problems with structural deficits in the future. So when you look at the 9.1 billion that the governor has proposed in her framework compared to the 9 billion in the current year, that's about a 1.1% increase over the biennium. And you can imagine our costs are increasing greater than 1.1% over a biennium. So again, that just takes away from services that we can provide in the coming year. So stay tuned, more to come on that. Lots of water to flow under that bridge as we begin to build a budget, but lots of variables moving forward.
Well, thank you for that update. And I know you're crunching a lot of numbers, and thank you to your staff. And we thank all of our district employees that helped us save the money where we could so that we'll have it for next year when we're really going to have to make some tough choices. So thank you for that update. All right, next up is.
Oh, I had a question. I'm sorry you
I
didn't see it in there.
I am so sorry, Donna. I did not see that. I'm so sorry. Go
That's
ahead.
okay. Anyway, I was just wondering, I know at one point we had a shortfall. So what exactly has happened with all that? And then I know there's been a number of different things that have happened with PERS. And could you sort of explain the impact of those two on our projected budget?
Sure. So the shortfall that we had last year, we essentially got ourselves to where our revenues and our expenditures were at a break-even level in our proposed budget. That did not allow, that allowed for the 5% required contingency that the board says we need in reserve. And we also, but it did not meet the need of the other 5% that we needed to actually look at building back a reserve that we'd spent the year before. So all of the expenditures from last year are captured in our beginning fund balance for this year and in our current projected ending fund balance. So we are currently spending less than we're bringing in, which allows that fund balance to go up. And PERS, regarding PERS, we received our new rates in September. Our PERS rates will go down in the 21-23 biennium, somewhere in the neighborhood of about a 3% reduction in the rates. And those will be captured in our current service level that we'll share with you at an upcoming meeting.
That sounds good. Thank you, Michael. I'm glad I asked.
Welcome.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay. Now we will move on to return to school update. Deputy Superintendent Hansman, do you want to get us started?
Sure. Good evening, Board Chair Chimchuk, school members, and Superintendent Grotting. We're happy to be with you again this evening. And I really want to start out by really thanking the board for your support. As both Sarah and Superintendent Grotting have alluded to, our staff and our students and our schools have worked incredibly hard for the last 10 months and really transformed the way we're teaching. So we know that that hard work does not go unnoticed, and your support along the way has really meant a lot. It has been a heavy lift for everybody involved, and we really appreciate that. Tonight, our return to school update is a little bit shorter than it has been in the past, but Brian Sika will give you an update on our timeline for both hybrid and LIPI in the coming months. And I'm really excited that Danielle Hudson is with us tonight with a team of people from Terra Linda, from principals to counselors, and her team is going to talk about the behavior health and wellness teams that every one of our schools in Beaverton have at this point. And each of those teams are doing incredible work with making sure that all of our students are engaged and attending our classes in our schools. And they will show you the direct ways in which we're making sure that all of our kids are being served. So I'm really excited for that presentation tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Brian and get us started.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, Board Chair Chimchuk, Superintendent Grotting, board members, all staff, and everyone watching throughout the world. David, can you go ahead and advance the next slide? So just a little bit to remind us that with the decisions we're making are crucial, that we consider all angles, but we also need to consider that our current educational environment is having different results for different students, and they can be predictable. And we just want to take a moment to ensure everyone and to help everyone remember to reflect through these questions. We call these the BSD equity lens, and they certainly guide our thinking and drive our decision making. So just as a reminder, we have two formats for teaching and learning going on in the district right now. We have comprehensive distance learning, which is certainly our primary mode of education. And then we also have a small amount of limited in-person instruction, which would just be those crucial evaluations that we need to do that just can't be done in a virtual environment. The limited in-person instruction we are doing through those evaluations, they're not, it's not like every day with the same student, as you know. It's just a student coming in for a small amount of time and then returning. So we have no ongoing, if you will, in-person instruction occurring at this time. Let's go ahead and advance, David, please. So this slide demonstrates the metrics that we need to be at, and Superintendent Grotting described where we're at. Just as a visual reminder, we really need to get both those blue and purple lines, which represents Washington and Multnomah counties, down below the horizontal red line, to really think about expanding our limited in-person instruction any more than we are. And we need to be down to that yellow line to be talking about a hybrid. And now, while maybe we have a little glimmer of hope, you see the line starting to go down. Not to be pessimistic in it, but looking through the data at the state level, the state of Oregon's case rates still are increasing, and many of our surrounding communities are increasing as well. So we'll keep a close look on this. We don't want to get too caught up in the little blips in the data that may or may not be suggesting long-term trends or not, but we'll certainly take a look at those. But again, I think the takeaway from this is that the spread and the positivity rate of COVID-19 in our community is really what is dictating the timeline that the superintendent shared, and that I'm going to go into just a little bit more detail on. So can you advance the next slide, please? So there's two purposes for sharing these dates with you right now. One is to reiterate, we will not be expanding or adjusting our instructional framework or our instructional model until the very earliest February 8th. The February 8th date marks the beginning of the second semester or the beginning of the third quarter. Those dates are the same. One thing to look at, though, the second reason for showing this is that even when we start the hybrid model, for example, if that were to start on February 8th or whenever it does start, it won't be all students back at once. We'll start with those youngest students. Right now, the requirements are for us to start grades K-3, and then there's a rollout period before the remaining students would be able to come back and participate in whatever that instructional model is. Of course, again, the virus controls the timeline, and these are all based on COVID metrics, based on bargaining, and based on other factors. It's okay, David. You can stay on that next one. Thanks,
Ryan.
Yeah, Ann, go ahead.
Sorry, just one clarifying question before you get too much further. If you could go back just one, to get to the K-3 hybrid, if you go back even just one more slide, do we have to get below that yellow line for any students to go back to school in some of the time in person?
For the hybrid, yes. So the hybrid would be that kind of about half of the school, about half the classes. The only exception to what you said, Ann, is that limited in person can start below the red line, which represents 200, but that really is just a small kind of groups of 20 at a time and limits of a few hundred students on campus throughout the week. So any appreciable, is below that yellow line.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the question. How about one more? Oh, no, David, I'm sorry. My mistake. That is the right one. I just details on the timeline that Superintendent Grotting shared. We've kind of set some dates to continue our communication and to suggest possible changes to, for example, that February 8th date. December 16th, that's right now, we'll go out to the community. Actually, it'll probably end up going out tomorrow with that firm decision the superintendent had made about February 8th. Looking on or about the 13th of January, we'll need to make a decision on that February 8th date at that time, because we'll need to, if it were to go, we would need to be doing considerable action to make that happen. I think it needs to be shared with the board, needs to be shared with the community that that's not likely to happen. And then it's likely to happen that on that January 13th date, there'll be some extension or some change. And again, like the superintendent said, we'll be making those decisions quarter by quarter And the third quarter will be ending on April 15th, I believe, which would then we'd be talking about the following Monday for a return plan. Go ahead.
So
you can go ahead.
I have a clarifying question with that. So if on January, I just want to understand this. If on January 13th, we see that the numbers haven't hit the relevant, yellow line or red line, depending on if we're talking limited in person or, K through 3, and we postpone, it would be postponed until April in terms of going back to school.
Yeah, that's correct, Susan. That'd be that next quarter. Like Dawn was saying, we're going to go quarter to quarter on this for planning and for all of that. And so the next quarter ends in mid-April. The caveat to that, and this is going to be sort of the frustrating part, or one of the frustrating parts of this to think about, is we do know that a vaccine's coming out, and we do know that that's going to impact us. What we don't know is exactly how it'll impact those metrics, and we don't know how it may impact guidance coming out from Oregon Health Authority or the Oregon Department of Education. We'll always have to have that caveat. If the guidance or the regulations change, we'll just have to come back and I think pivot's the word of the century that I think we hope we never use again, but that's what we'll have to do. But based on all the information we have now, Susan, that's exactly right. We're going to go quarter by quarter, and that gets us to mid-April. And it looks like Tom unmuted, so go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, to that point in what Superintendent Garadin shared in his comments, do you have a timeline for when educators might get the vaccine and when we might be able to have Oregon educators vaccinated?
I'm getting a little out of my league as not a public health expert. I'll only share the information that was shared with us, and it was shared with us in a way that the entire distribution chain of a medical vaccine could influence this. But tentatively, the 1A is hoping to be fully vaccinated by the end of January, which that's not teachers and educators. Teachers and educators would be the next 1B, which we didn't get a firm timeline on, but you can imagine it would be coming shortly after that with maybe some overlap. So certainly not this year. Into the latter part of winter is really the best information that's been shared with us. Again, on a very tentative bit of information we've been given.
Is there prioritization within the 1B category?
So that's a great question. That came up, and I believe that's still in development. I think kind of, I don't know quite the right word. The direction would be the closer you are to student contact, the higher you would be on the priority list. And you'll hear a lot of times it'll come out as quote unquote teachers, but Washington County was clear with us. That's actually educators. They're just using that term very broadly. And they are looking to superintendents. They're looking to those of us in education to help kind of define what those levels would be, who in it gets it first, but those rules and decisions haven't been made yet, at least as far as the information shared with us.
One last question, which is when you're talking about 1A and 1B and the timeline for how long it takes to vaccinate each group, is 1B a much larger group than 1A?
I don't want to say much because I don't know, but it definitely is larger. It just includes many more groups. 1A was described us as public health workers and those residents of long-term care facilities.
Okay. And 1B is like all frontline workers?
Yeah, it's a somewhat of a subset of the remainder of what is called essential workers, but again, using a different definition of essential than like previous executive orders.
Thanks, that's helpful.
And if I could, Vice Chair Collette, the thing they've also been talking about is don't forget with the current two companies that are out there, Moderna and Pfizer, even after the first vaccination, you're almost another month out, 21 days or 28 days with the next vaccination. And so there's almost a month there. And then our team has done a great job in planning, working with our unions, is to make sure that when we do decide to come back, we'll have to get our folks back in our buildings. We'll have to go through some planned protocols. There will be some infrastructure changes that we're working with Chief Operations Officer Gomez, and make sure we're doing the runs through. So when we do bring kids back, we do bring staff back, we know we're on target. one of the other positive things that we have heard from the Oregon Health Department is that we will be able to provide COVID-19 testing at each one of our sites. That will not be testing for everybody, but if we suspect either a student and or a staff member, and we have permission, that we'll be able to offer a test right there, a fairly rapid test. If we see somebody exhibiting symptoms, that we'll be able to give that test, and then we'll work with the Oregon Health Authority. And we talked with our county today and trying to partnership to find out how that training will take place, as well as then what the contact tracing and all of that will look like. But that was hopeful news that we will be able to administer the test ourselves. It will not take a nurse or anything. We'll just have to have somebody that goes through the training.
So just to kind of summarize a couple important points from what I just heard, when we're talking about the number of vaccine doses, we get half that for the number of people that will be vaccinated. And when you're talking about the date people receive the vaccine, it's really 31 days and some odd change from when the vaccination will actually take effect, and it's safe for that person. Well, or relative to the guidance with the vaccine, that word safe, I want to be really careful using.
I think that is, Tom, really important when we're hearing the dates come out of the county. Are they talking received the second dose already, or are they talking, the first dose come in? When they're talking number of doses, it has seen that you're exactly right, that when they describe the number of doses, they really are the full number of doses. So essentially you would need to cut that number in half to get the number of people. And then, yeah, as we learn guidance on how long after, and then like Superintendent Grodding was saying, the amount you can still transmit the disease with it. That the dates, they've been pretty good with us. They're pretty aspirational about that 1A, getting those both doses in, but we haven't really heard timelines on how far 1B, 1C, and then going into 2 would take to get both doses.
And when we're talking with rapid testing, I'm assuming, Don, you mean like a spit test, not a swab test.
Yeah, I don't know those details. Assuming, but not exactly clear. And once again, when we heard that, we didn't hear the information actually came through a Department of Education meeting where we had somebody there from the Department of Education, and I think our county health still trying to get their heads wrapped around this too. It's just so fast moving.
Okay. The only reason I bring that up is there's different levels and difficulty in administering those two tests.
Yeah.
That's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. And just last sentence, and I apologize if this hasn't been brought up, but we really need the board and the community and everyone to be considering. We are looking at multiple scenarios where I show there, and I'm getting to that last line where I'm talking about monthly communications. We are looking at multiple scenarios on what summer could and may look like, and we're looking at multiple scenarios on what even fall of 2021 can look like. I know we all want to be able to say we're going to be all back and ready certainly by fall, but we are having to consider just all the possible scenarios going with the events of vaccination, the students, and just generally speaking where we're at. And so we'll continue to update the board on all of those plans. But right now, a considerable focus of ours is continuing to improve CDL for all of our students. And so at this time, I am going to turn it over to Dr. Hudson and her team, who's going to talk about the great work they're doing with their behavioral health and wellness staff. So Danielle, it is all yours.
Thank you, Dr. Sika. Good evening, Board Chair Timchuk, the school board members, and Superintendent Grodding. I am here tonight. I have the pleasure of talking a little bit more about our behavioral health and wellness team, and I have our district team here with us to give us some overview. And then we've also invited the behavioral health and wellness team from Terra Linda Elementary, and they will be sharing a little bit about their behavioral health and wellness team. And we're hoping to then next month bring either a middle school or high school, and then a middle school and a high school in February, just so you get kind of an idea of how our behavioral health and wellness teams are happening in our district. Next slide, please. So I would like to just start by introducing our district team. That includes myself, and as well as Amy Baker, our social worker on special assignment, Chris Damiano, our K-12 social emotional learning TOSA, Vili Green, our counselor on special assignment, and Leslie Rogers, our safety and wellness TOSAs. So together, the 5 of us make up our district behavioral health and wellness team. And we've been working hard this year to bring about a streamlined process where we are moving away from silos of counselors just working by themselves, or social workers, or student success coaches, or the building admin team, but instead a really collaborative team at every single Beaverton school, where we are talking about students and their needs. We are leading the conversation from an equity-based lens, really leaning into our equity questions. Additionally, we are really focusing on our trauma-informed practices and anti-biased and anti-racist practices. So merging those two together so that we make sure we're not continuing to disenfranchise students and families, while also helping to support them in a way that makes sense to them. And so we're also kind of we're gathering demographics about students who are being referred to these teams to really get a better understanding of why a student might be referred to a behavioral health and wellness team, and what we can do as a district to be more responsive. And before I transfer it over to my team to take over, just a couple of things that we are doing right now as we're focusing with or meeting with our behavioral health and wellness teams at the building level is around connection with families. One of the big things we want to make sure is we're looking at behavioral health and wellness data that shows that even after interventions, 20% of our students are still not engaged at kind of a level that we would hope. And what we're really thinking about is how do we build that connection with the family so that those families want to reconnect with us in the fall and still want to be part of the Beaverton School District. We don't want to lose those families. So we're working on highlighting connections with families. And then we're trying to do that through a trauma-informed lens. One of those signs is through our new attendance calls. We've updated those phone calls to start with saying, hey family, we know that it's a difficult time and we're here to support you. Your student may have missed school today, but you know what, you can come and reach out to us, to our counselor, social worker, the admin team, to really try to have parents and students feel connected and supported by our district. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move over, or can we do next slide? And I will have Amy Baker talk a little bit.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Amy Baker, the social worker on special assignment. And I just want to remind you of some of the basic functions of the behavioral health and wellness teams and what we're doing at the district level to support those teams at the school level. So as has been mentioned, these BHNW teams do meet every single week to talk about student and family needs, and they also talk about staff needs. These teams also coordinate the social emotional lesson delivery to all students in their buildings. And then we support these teams at the district level during Wednesday collaboration time. So we're able to get together nurses, school counselors, the success coaches, school social workers, and other folks on those teams. So they have time to learn from each other and network and collaborate. And then we're also providing targeted professional development to all of those team members together on Wednesdays. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it along to Chris. Next slide.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to share. And this is actually not a comprehensive list of all of the ways that the BH&W teams from each school site have reached out and tried to engage families and students and caregivers. But this is some of the highlights that we have to share. A couple of ones that you might see on here. Danielle, just a moment ago, referenced the new and improved attendance message, which really comes from a strengths-based, compassionate lens, and especially for those repetitive phone calls that some families are getting. The home visits are something we're quite proud of, in the sense of that even in this pandemic, we're still able to get people safely to visit homes. With the help of Leslie Rogers, we were able to create some guidance around that and a Canvas course, which even has a little quiz at the end of it. And the gift cards referenced there were a scaled up, kind of a scaled up project from one of the earlier projects was Camp Connect from the summer. And they found some really big successes around cultivating family advocacy and creating stronger family connections. So we scaled that up with the help of community involvement BEF to the tune of about $10,000 that we dispersed through the elementary schools. And then the last one that I'll really point to is a CDL parent book. And that is every school's admin team and BH&W team received a book that will help them kind of build their toolkit in supporting families when it comes to learning in the CDL environment, how they could support their kids and support their own adult social emotional learning. And then the sustained relationship building is going to be, Leslie will talk about that a lot more in a moment. But really that is the opportunity to be able to share when we meet with the school-based sites as a district-based site, we're able to kind of share tips and tricks that we are seeing successes with. And with that set up, I'll send the next slide to Leslie.
Hi, I'm Leslie Rogers. I'm glad to be here tonight. So we started last month doing a behavioral health and wellness roadshow where our team of 5 is scheduling meetings with every building team. Our goal of that is to really give some personalized attention to validate the work that is being done in buildings and to really create an authentic conversation about what's going well and what the challenges are and trying to determine what sort of help and support we can provide to schools. What's been really interesting about that is the brilliance that has come out of those meetings, hearing about some of the innovative ideas, the out of the box thinking, some of the best practices and strategies that are going well. And then that has led us to be able to share it with other schools. We're putting it in TNL Tuesday, sharing it on a spreadsheet, making sure that we are reiterating those good ideas because we want to ensure that schools are not operating in silos. So the goal of the goal of these meetings is to build relationships, also to validate the really heroic efforts of these teams, to make sure that we're demonstrating solidarity. And to really close that gap. We've also talked about crisis response protocols in CDL. That is something that I get to be involved with around whether that is behaviors that are happening in synchronous learning, parent crises, mental health crises, threat to self, harm to self around suicide or harm to others, and making sure that we are available to answer questions and provide whatever support is needed to those schools. And finally, within those roadshow meetings, we've created a survey where schools we send them off into breakout rooms to reflect on their practices. It gives a chance to kind of highlight the challenges, highlight the successes, ask us questions, and again, document those best practices and what is working well. And I would say just in terms of the relationship building, it's been awesome. And what we want schools to know is that we are there for them. And with that, next slide, and I'll pass it on to Belai.
So what have we learned? The feedback has been resoundingly positive. We're hearing from schools that this format has sparked better collaboration across disciplines by including other specialists and support staff, including nurses and grad mentors, bilingual facilitators. This has resulted in richer discussions, more tailored interventions, and allowed for teams to identify more students who would have typically fallen through the cracks. But in identifying more student needs, it's also led schools to really reflect on how they define authentic engagement and realizing that participation doesn't necessarily always equal engagement. We know that as a system, we weren't meeting the needs of our students and families before COVID. We know that distance learning has exposed a lot of disparities and inequities as a system. And we know that as a system, we need to really rethink how we define engagement so that it better reflects the values of our community, include cultural capital, student voice, and parent voice. Finally, we know that our schools are doing all that they can to engage students in CDL. We are hearing that schools are going all the way up to the doorsteps of the families with books, supplies, and resources in hand, and are still coming up short. We also know that our families are doing the best that they can, but circumstances are preventing them from engaging. And what we've been telling behavioral health and wellness teams, and what we'd like for all of you to know, is that continuous and sustained positive connections help build and strengthen resilience, and it's money in the bank. Efforts to create a community of care may not always produce immediate results, but they will in time, and for schools not to get discouraged and not to give up. school teams remain vigilant to provide support, and we want our students and families to know that we aren't going anywhere, that we are here for you when you are ready. Don't just take it from us. We're so lucky to have the team from Terra Linda here today to share their experience with you. So take it away.
Hi, thank you for inviting us this evening. And we are, one more slide. We are here with our team. I'm Christy Batzel, the principal, and I have with me tonight Britta McCarter, our counselor, Christy Edmonds, our student success coach, who also serves as our intervention teacher, and Zandy Wessenberg, our school nurse, and Terry Hammond, our social worker. And what's super exciting about our team is we were really a team of 3 last year with our school-based staff, Britta, Christy, and I, and then we would connect with Zandy when we could, and our social worker was different last year, but again, we would meet occasionally, maybe monthly, to check in when there were things we needed to talk about. And this year, as you've already heard, our team meets every week, which has been a really amazing gift to be able to put our heads together to talk about the needs of our families. And so what we wanted to do tonight is give you some context for what you've heard from our district team, and then I will tie some of those things together at the end. So we're going to start with some stories tonight. And Britta McCarter, you can go to the next slide. Britta is just going to tell a story about one of our families, and then we have a couple more. Britta and Terry actually are going to give you a picture of one of the things our team has done this year with one of our families.
Hi, I wanted to share about one family that our success coach Christy and I started connecting with over the summer through Camp Connect, which Chris talked about a little bit. This is a single parent family with multiple children in the school district, and they've, because of COVID and the closures, they've experienced some pretty severe economic hardships. And so working with them, we've been able to connect them with lots of different resources that they've needed, food, clothing, internet, hotspots. And we've been working with them all school year and since August. And we early on noticed that their need was a lot greater than we had anticipated. So once we started meeting weekly with our behavioral health and wellness team, it was really easy to be able to brainstorm together and pull in different ideas and resources than maybe last year in the spring when it was kind of just the 3 of us working together. We didn't have all of that brain power coming together to come up with different ideas. Excuse me. So it was nice to be able to have that access to all of those different ideas to then share with the family. The family was initially very reluctant to be connected with our social worker. So Terry, our social worker, was able to pass information on to me that I could then share with the family. Unfortunately, since working with this family, we've been able to build a lot of trust and a really, really good sense of rapport. And the parent has felt more comfortable in having that direct connection with our social worker since. So we now have multiple people on our team who are really good points of contact for the family, and the parent feels comfortable to reach out and ask for help and ask for support in lots of different ways. And go ahead, Terry.
Okay, thanks, Britta. So I'm Terry Hammond, the school social worker, and I met Terra Linda in 5 other schools in the district. And my introduction to the family that Britta's talking about was when I was able to meet with a family, with a parent, and support them through a really complicated application process that they were applying for resources and support with through Washington County. And during that meeting, I got to know the parents, I got to know more about the family, they got to know who I was and what my role was with the district. And after a while, they felt comfortable enough sharing more needs with me, and I offered to follow up with them with some more resources. We did that, and now we're keeping in touch pretty regularly. This parent's a really strong advocate for their family and for themselves. And like Britta was saying, now feels comfortable reaching out to me and Britta and the rest of the team when anything else comes up. And there's many people supporting this family in their different roles. And because of the behavioral health and wellness team, we're able to coordinate our support and collaborate so we're not overwhelming the families with a bunch of things coming from a lot of different people. And I think now Christy Edmonds is going to share another example of our work.
Hi, I'm Christy Edmonds. So I'm going to talk about another one of our families that we've been working with. Again, this work that we've been doing and connecting with this family has started in the summer with our Camp Connect, which was a grant that was provided by the Beaverton Education Foundation. So this allowed us to kind of look into their needs with food resources, clothing, if they needed internet. We were able to provide the gift cards to the families because we know that we need to meet their needs before any learning can happen. So we got to get a head start on that with this family and providing them the resources they needed first. And this family has multiple children in the school district at different levels of schools. So, and another thing about this family, to give you a little background, they English is not their first language. So it made it easier when we connected to have somebody that they can text, that they could contact, that they could ask any questions over the summer. As we know, when school started, there was so much communication coming, and being at multiple schools means communication was from like 3 different counselors. There were 12 or more teachers contacting about their schedules and different things. And so our team decided that we needed to help streamline this communication for this family. It was a lot of people getting in touch with this family. And so we brought together all 3 behavior health and wellness teams from all 3 schools to assign a point contact person, which that point contact person became our community liaison. And so with so many other things going on for this family, we just found this main point of contact to be very helpful for the family and for the schools. So I think our next one is going to be, Sandy's going to start us off for that.
Perfect. Hi, thank you, Christy. So my name is Sandy and I'm the school nurse for Terra Linda, as well as 4 other schools. So the last student we'll be discussing was brought to our team because the family member had originally reached out to the teacher looking for support with behaviors that were being seen in the home. And we didn't have an established relationship with this family at the time. So initially Britta, our school counselor, was planning on reaching out. But during our team meeting, I had noticed the student did have a medical diagnosis. And so we decided as a team, I should make the initial contact with the family to just gather more information and see how we could best support this student. And then when connecting with this family, we actually found out there was much more than just needing behavioral support at home. The barriers that this family and student were facing in accessing their education were far greater than we originally understood. And so there were siblings in the home that were needing health support, resource needs such as food and financial assistance, childcare needs, and so on. So after connecting with the family throughout the course of a week and truly gaining a better understanding of the situation, I brought the information back to our behavioral health and wellness team so we could use all of our areas of expertise and collaborate and really create a plan for this family to help the student access their education while we're in distance learning. We decided the next step would be to complete a home visit. So myself and Terry, our school social worker, went out to connect with the family in person. So now I'm going to pass it off to Terry to speak a little on how our home visit went, what we're seeing now, and our plans for continued support for this family.
Thanks, Sandy. So I joined Sandy on this home visit to meet and learn more about the Terra Linda family. And like the behavioral health and wellness team said before, our focus in these teams is forming relationships with the family first and foremost. And a home visit in this particular situation was an appropriate way to start that. And just as a side note, the home visits look really different now. We were standing outside, we were wearing masks, we were very far apart, and yet it felt like a much more natural way to have a meaningful conversation rather than the emails and the phone calls and Zoom meetings that we're all used to right now. And again, this is unique for every family. Prior to this visit, we connected with the students' teachers who had already prioritized certain aspects of distance learning, and they had already created an individualized plan. So at the home visit, we were able to discuss that plan in person, which seemed to be really beneficial for the family. And they just kind of seemed to exhale a little bit. And then we also discussed resources we could offer. At that time, we had the gift cards that were provided from community involvement. And we also spent time getting to know the family and ask them if, have them name like what needs and supports that they felt like they needed. And we followed up with that with resources and information. In the weeks after our visit, we did see an initial increase in attendance and assignment completion. And that doesn't always happen with every family because relationship is the most important thing. But with this particular family, there was an uptick in the following weeks of engagement. And now we're continuing to connect and build rapport and check in with the student. And I have now an ongoing relationship with a family where if I hear about new resources or organizations that have recently got more funding that fall into the category of what that family is looking for, I just contact them individually and let them know what kind of new supports are available right now. And so as a team, we're all continuing this ongoing relationship. And I think that's the end of our examples. And I think Christy is going to provide a quick summary of our work at Terra Linda.
Yeah, so as you heard, those are just 3 examples or 3 families that we've worked with. We've supported quite a number this year. And we'll continue with that work. But just as you heard, there's just a lot of things that our team is working on, and it all goes together. There isn't where we're only talking about family support or engagement or attendance or academic progress, but we're taking all of those different pieces into consideration as we meet and are putting our heads together to try and come up with the best plan. We often talk about who the best contact is going to be for a family. As you heard in the second example, that can be a tricky thing when there's so many points of contact in a school. And so we're able to pay attention to that and have that point person so that we're providing that consistent outreach for a family and point of contact. The other thing our team has helped with, especially over the holiday time, is coordinating food deliveries or supplies or other supports. And we've actually continued that even as we think about our weekly supply pickup that we offer at our school. There's families that aren't able to come for various reasons. So our team helps coordinate those deliveries and just making sure that our families and our students have what they need. But again, as you heard our team talk about in the first group as well, that those connections and relationships are really what matters. And we have to try to solve some of those barriers that are in the way before students are able really to access their academics. Okay, so the next slide just has a couple successes. So as you heard our team talking about that weekly meeting, really approaching families with how can we be helpful? Rather than saying, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, why can't you do this? But coming at our relationship or our outreach as, what do you need? How can we be helpful to you? And then that helps us address some of the things we're really wanting to get out, which would be, engagement in their Zoom or getting their assignments completed, those kinds of things. We have been able to support a lot of families and really taking that holistic approach, thinking about all the needs a family would have beyond just connecting with school, because there's so many things in the way for our families right now, as you all know. And then I think the other success really is streamlining our approach. As you heard in those examples, there's a lot going on, but as a team, we've been able to really figure out the best approach or what we think might be the best approach at the time, so that we're really trying to reach out to the families with what they actually need at the time, or finding out what they need so we can provide those supports. Because I think a lot of times in schools, we just hope something works and try lots and lots of different things as we're supporting families. And this behavioral health and wellness team has allowed us to really think together about what's going to support our families. And then, of course, there are some things that are hard. So that's our next slide. Of course, engaging online is hard. And I think our Camp Connect that you heard about early on was actually a way that we were able to provide some success, at least to the access point of online. So that has gone well. But then now that everybody, I think, in our school has the ability to get online and has a device, it's now getting them to sign in and join their classes and participate. And so that's the next piece that we've been problem solving. Also, as you know, families in crisis are, it's a huge barrier, and, you know, finding food or paying bills, those are the first thing. And until they have the ability to address those things, you know, sitting down and doing your schoolwork or finding out what needs to be completed is really down the list. And so our team is trying to support families in those areas. The other piece that you heard in the first story tonight around just some of our families are really reluctant to speak with a counselor or a social worker because they hear that and they hear past experiences in, you know, the system, and they want to avoid that. And so it really takes a lot of effort to build those relationships so that they trust us and are willing to rely on the resources that we have in our social worker and counselor. And so sometimes getting that initial contact through a nurse is a much more less threatening approach or point of contact. And then we can get to the point where a social worker or a counselor can reach out. So we've had some success with that, but it does take time for families to say yes to those resources. You heard about families in multiple schools in one of our examples. That is just really hard, especially if you think about a second language family who are struggling to understand what we're sending in English. And I just feel for our families who are trying to navigate such a big system. And so that continues to be a challenge and will continue to be that way. I think the other hard thing is right now, I guess a success is we're just focusing on probably half of what our job as a behavioral health and wellness team will be. It's a lot of time now, and that time's going to double or triple whenever we get back in person, because the team will also be available to problem solve or think through supports for behaviors that happen in the classroom. And most of those aren't in play right now and will eventually be there. So I actually really look forward to a time when we have our team able to support that. We haven't had that situation before where we have, you know, a whole team thinking through supports for our families, because often what we're seeing at school is telling us more about what's going on outside of school, not just in school. So we need our team to help support us in that. But that will also increase, like I said, the time we need together. And then I think the last piece that's really hard is when we're in person, when our students are in front of us, we learn a lot about them. We can talk to them. Their parents aren't listening or their family members aren't listening in the room or sitting next to them. We can ask them questions. And then we also just become aware of their needs, either because of what we see or what they're saying at school. And we're just missing that information right now. So we're having to rely on what we know from before or what we happen to see on Zoom. And that will change someday where we're able to have that information, and that will inform our teams so we can even do a better job reaching out. But that is a challenge right now. But I can tell you that I am super happy to have a team where we are working together. This is, we're headed in the right direction. I know hopefully someday we'll get to a place where our whole team even maybe is at our school all the time versus, you know, right now where Terry and Zandy, our nurse and social worker, are split between some other schools. And I can see the power of that as we move forward. So that day's coming at some point, we hope. And, you know, thank you for listening, and thank you for supporting these teams in our schools as a district, just because it is such a powerful opportunity for our families.
So I just want to thank the Terra Linda team for their time, and then also our behavioral health and wellness district team, and then open it up to any questions. And it looks like Donna has a question, Becky.
Oh, yes, I do. I sent Becky a little note. So anyway, I just want to commend your work. This is just, you know, wonderful and it's awesome and it's targeted and it's great. I just have a simple question, I think, and the Terra Linda principal, Christy, can just guess. And welcome, Christy. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Could you perhaps just share or tell me just approximately what your enrollment is now and approximately how many, what's your caseload? How many families are you working with now?
Oh, you know what? I'm going to have Britta, if she's here, answer that question. She is keeping all of our data. We actually have each of our schools are using a similar data tracking system, and she is our person in charge of that. So I'm going to ask her to answer. Britta, are you on here? And do you have a guess? Best guess?
I am. I don't have the document open. My best guess, it started off, there was a lot of referrals at the beginning as we were settling into CDL, and as families have become more used to it, and this has become the norm for right now, we're definitely not getting as overwhelmed with referrals, but most of the families that were referred in the beginning are still open cases, and so we're still supporting them very frequently.
Yeah, Britta, I pulled up your report, so I have information about that. So at Terra Linda, they've had, so one of the things I want to start with is we're really pushing teachers to do interventions to start with, right? Reaching out to families, doing phone calls, because really that's the lowest level of support, and those people already have connections. That next level is a referral to our behavioral health and wellness teams. And at Terra Linda, they have had 27 referrals since the start of the school year, which, and in that, most of those students, they are continuing to support those students and those families. So they're finding success, like either they've been resolved or they're continuing to work with those families. But so for Terra Linda, that has kind of been their kind of overview. But when we look at the entire district as well, we're looking at a pretty large, we've seen a total number of 2,439 behavioral health and wellness referrals this school year across the district. So, Terra Linda is giving us a snapshot. We picked them, one, because their team is amazing and they're working really hard together, but they're also a really good example of a team that isn't a Title I school where they might have had some title supports already in place. And they're not also a super affluent school where they're kind of more struggling with parents who are pulling their students out to homeschool them or doing other learning pods. So they're a really good example of a school that doesn't get some of that additional funding, but they still have students who have a great need for support. But overall, there are about 27 families there that they're working with a half-time student success coach, a kind of 0.2 social worker, if even that, a 0.25 nurse, and a full-time counselor. So it is a bunch of people who are going each a lot of ways, but this building, through the framework we've set up for them, they have really been able to come together and say, how do we meet families where they are and how do we support them?
Well, thank you, Danielle. Thank you so much. Thank you, Britta, and thank you, Christy. I appreciate the answer. Thank you.
Susan, go ahead.
It's a quick question, I think. So this would be for the nurse and the social worker. I'm sorry. Thank you all for your hard work. I appreciate it, at both the district level and at Terra Linda. But the question is, because you have such limited time with Terra Linda, I'm just curious about the other schools, if you're seeing about the same. I don't know what other schools you're working with, if you both go to the same schools, different schools, if it's similar situations, if some schools have more cases than other cases. Are you dealing with high school, middle schools? So there you go. I guess it's more questions in one than one there.
So I can speak for my caseload. Terry and I do have different caseloads. So, and I'm across, I not only serve Terra Linda, but I have a middle school across town. I have Highland Park, as well as 2 other elementary schools and a charter school. And so we're seeing the same needs in my experience across all of my schools, and we have very similar practices. I will say my middle school, we have a little more students, so we do have more needs in that school, and I am involved in that team as well. And so, but that team is a little bit bigger. We do have a few more resources with that school as well. But yes, we're seeing the same kind of needs, the same academic support, the same behavior support, the same needs for resources in all of my schools.
And I was gonna say too, I can follow up on the last question. We were looking up the reports and we have 63 referrals from the beginning of the school year. I think 23 was from the last quarter, but just wanted to update that. I have a unique position as a social worker. I'm in between high school and district. District social workers are across elementary schools. So I am at 3 elementary schools. Community transitions program, BASE and FLEX, which is K through 12. So it's kind of all across the board. It's very interesting. As far as number of referrals, Terra Linda is kind of right in the middle of the number. It's about average. I have a little over 40 referrals, 43 referrals just on my caseload across all of those schools. And Terra Linda's in the middle of that. I would say as far as what kind of things I'm seeing at all of the different schools with the elementary schools that I'm working with and on the teams, I'm seeing a lot of needs for resources and support because we're working with families more often. In the high schools that I'm working with, the majority of the students I work with are seeking outside mental health provider referrals. There's a really high need for that right now. And it takes a lot of research to find people who are actually taking clients right now because they're pretty overloaded and there's a really high need.
Any other questions for the team? Well, we appreciate you giving us, we know it's been a long day for you and you've got another one tomorrow. And we appreciate you taking the time to be with us this evening and providing all that good information and giving us a much better view of what we're facing in our schools during CDL and during these trying times with our families. So thank you so much for taking the time to share all this important information with us. Really appreciate it. So thank you. Now it is time to move on to discussion items. And first up is the comprehensive annual financial report. And back to you, Mr. Schofield.
Thank you, Chair Tim Chuck, members of the board, Superintendent Grotting. I appreciate a chance to present you with our comprehensive annual financial report. By way of introduction, I want to say a big thank you and express my appreciation to Jason Gutro and the finance team for their hard work. Excellent and a job well done. Not to steal his thunder, we have Rob Drake here, chair of our audit committee, who is prepared to share some information with you. And Rob, also want to thank you for your service, longstanding member of our audit committee, and you do a great job. So take it away, Rob.
Thank you, Mike. Madam Board Chair and board members, my name is Rob Drake and I serve as chair for your audit committee and have done so for about a decade. And I have a municipal background for anyone who's listening to this meeting and familiar with these budgets. You may or may not also know that Oregon law requires that public agencies must have an independent outside financial audit performed annually. The accounting firm of Grove, Mueller, and Swank PC was retained to perform the audit. The audit that I'm discussing is for the approved budget for fiscal year 2019-20, ending this past June 2020. I'm pleased to report a clean opinion was given by the auditors and that they have had no material issues with how the funds were expended and accounted for in fiscal year 2019 and 20. You can be assured that our tax dollars are being managed in a transparent and legal manner. No issues were noted by the independent outside auditor. And with that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight, and it's great to have such an experienced hand at the wheel still. So we appreciate your long service with us, Rob. We really do, and just to keep Mike squared away, because we're never quite sure of him. So we're glad that we have you overseeing Mike. But are there any questions from board members on the audit? Leanne?
I just wanted to say thank you. I know I served with Rob and the committee a bit ago, and I just so appreciate all your guys' work. And to the accounting department, what an amazing chore this is to put it together, and great job to your team for getting a clean audit. That's amazing. Great job.
And Anne or Eric, I know you've been overseeing this and been a part of this for years. Anything to add as far as what board members should know about the audit?
No.
Go ahead, Ann. You go first.
No.
Okay. So yeah, we had some new members. I think Lee and Denise joined the audit committee. So it's always nice to have like 3 public people. They're really good at CPA questions. And Lee was so good. She used Google Doc to document questions and keep us on our toes. So it's always nice to have people volunteering like that on this very fun package. So.
Well, we're very fortunate to have such good people helping us oversee the taxpayers' dollars, and that we are using them wisely, and having the fiduciary responsibility to making sure that we have folks like you from our community that are helping us out. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you for that great report. So appreciate it. Next up, we have the first reading of policy ACB, all students belong. And David, I think you're maybe no, Camille. All right, Camille, sorry, let you be the point person.
That is fine. Thank you, Chair Timchuk, board members, and Superintendent Grotting. As many of you know, in the fall, this last fall, the Oregon Department of Education created a temporary rule which took effect in September, and it was designed to really create safe and inclusive school climates where all who participate in our school communities, parents, students, and volunteers feel welcome. The rules that were created by ODE prohibit some specific hate symbols and require districts to adopt and implement board policy and procedures that prohibit the use and display of those symbols, as well as create a response protocol for incidents of bias. OSBA, the Oregon School Board Association, created a sample board policy that districts could work from, and in large part, that's what's being recommended for you tonight to approve. We understand as staff that this is really only the beginning of the work, and we believe that this policy will be looked at by lots of different folks, the board's equity committee, task force, together with really trying to gather the input from our community and our staff and our students to make sure that the policy that we have in place over the long term really reflects those needs and supports all of those different folks. But today we're hopeful that we have a policy that meets the legal requirements and can be put in place to meet the regulatory deadline that we must have a policy in place by January 1, knowing that this is a springboard for us to continue to work on and perfect.
Okay, any questions from the board?
No questions, just comments. I'm just happy that we're finally making some progress in this area. So well done.
Well, this is something Leanne, go ahead.
Mine's not a question either. I was just going to say similar line to Donna, that I'm just so thankful to get something on the books in our about policy headed in this direction. And I look forward to the work that's yet to come in expanding and detailing, and with some community involvement as well as our staff. So thank you for the work to get it, at least begin the work to begin.
And Tom?
Most of what I was going to say has already been said, but I just want to emphasize to my fellow board members that we're going to be taking a look at this policy as a part of the Equitable Policies Task Force. And this may end up being a placeholder. This may be a policy that we strengthen or expand based on the input that we get from our community. So I'm glad to see it on the books, but I know that there's a lot of work to come. And the work with this policy, we're also going to be taking a look at the student handbook and some of our other policies. So we have some deep work to go in the coming months. But I just wanted to make sure that folks understood that this could end up potentially being a placeholder with another version of this coming in front of the board in the future.
I think the important note here is, even though this is something, our policies are something we control locally and have a say on here locally, this was something that was generated around the state, and it just shows how important it is that we recognize this work as a state, but then also how we are going to, what it means to us here in Beaverton, in the Beaverton School District. So it's a great framework to start from. So appreciate the presentation on that. And we will be visiting in this for months to come. So thank you very much. Next, we have the first reading of the PE adoption. And Deputy Superintendent Hansman, we'll start off with you, or Dr. Sika.
We're starting with Dr. Sika, and he has a team, or Cheryl Wardell with him. So yes.
Thanks for the introduction, Jenny. Thanks, thanks everyone again. Again, I'm Brian Sika, Administrator for Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. I have with me today Cheryl Wardell, who is our longtime TOSA for physical education in the district. So we're here to do a first reading of what is phase 2 of the physical education adoption. We'll go into a little bit of timeline. You board did adopt phase 1 a while back, and phase 2 was actually on your agenda April of 2020. And of course, March of 2020 is when our world changed. And so while we certainly haven't returned to normal, we are trying to continue this work to move the district forward and certainly to remain in compliance with Division 22. So could you advance the slide, please? So just a big thanks to our project team to go through the work of not only reflecting on our current state of physical education, but as well as best practices, national and international research, and to produce the report, which we are presenting to you today. I certainly won't go through all of these names, but just highlight that we had students, staff, community members, board members, as well as other administrators involved in this comprehensive process. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I'm just going to dig a little bit into the timeline, just for a reminder. In April of 2018 is when we presented phase 1 to the board, and we did, we were able, you were able to adopt that. And essentially at that time, budgets were, 2019. I said 2018 a second ago. Phase 1 was adopted in April of 2019. And it essentially right at that same time, we were going through a significant budget challenge in the district. And essentially all progress was halted due to budget concerns. At the start of the next school year, the project team reconvened and work went forward. Just as a reminder, the project team is really charged with reviewing the program, coming up with best practices. Those are kind of our alignments to our instructional framework. We come up with a position paper, which is sort of a philosophical piece, our learning targets, which do drive that consistent curriculum that is a goal of our district. And then we make recommendations on resources and materials. And then we inform the board on what budget implications would be, as well as what professional development for our staff will look like. So if you could go to the next slide, please. And again, so what has already been adopted are 3 of those components that I spoke to you. You were able to adopt, and you did adopt the position paper, the best practices document, and the learning targets. And so today we're just gonna, in the report that was presented to you, we outlined what the materials were, as well as some of the other components of that quality curriculum cycle. So next slide, please. We'll go into phase 2 now, which again, phase 2 are the components of the report that we're asking you to consider tonight as a first reading, and then vote at in the later board meeting. So Cheryl, if you want to go ahead and describe a little bit of the nuance that CDL threw into this.
Sure. Yes. So hello. Yes, I am Cheryl, and I also am teaching at William Walker this year, half-time. Yes. So we have researched and presented, as you know, there is no one resource that would meet the needs of physical education K-12. And so it is the best of what we see that is out there. So we this year have used WellNet. That's something that we used in our PEP grant it's a website for physical education. We have used Some Open, which is a free resource. We have done a lot of updates with our own BSD resources and our classroom resources. Obviously, teaching on Zoom is different. So we have done a lot of collaborating this year together to adapt physical education into homes. And the Marathon Kids is also something we had going as a club with our PE PEP grant. It's something that we piloted in our classrooms, found a lot of success, and we went ahead and launched that this year. Nike has helped fund that launch, where Synergy and their platforms speak, and we're giving kids a chance to be able to log miles from home. And our PE teachers are kind of the glue and the ambassador of that and logging those miles. And then the classroom teacher, even in CDL, has a choice to use it. But we see that as we come back into hybrid is useful. Things we have not been using yet are the Pangrazi. Our 5 for Life is really meant to be used in a gym. Obviously, heart rate monitors, we're waiting again until adoption and being able to see kids live. Our Spark and our teaching games for understanding, where we're doing a lot more fitness and things that are equitable to kids while they're home. Next slide, please. So some adjustments for PD. Again, we went ahead and went over our new learning targets and implemented those this year. We obviously had to do some things we didn't anticipate, such as Seesaw, teaching Zoom. We did some content implementation. We have modified our learning targets for CDL. We've done a lot of vetting and finding resources, creating our own resources that fit our kids and our learning targets. And we have done a curriculum map for CDL. We have put a strong emphasis on SEL, which is already a large part of our program. Some things that will need to be done after the adoption and as we move out of CDL will be a curriculum map. We will need to be doing some PD around resources, what's adopted, use of iPads, which we have about 1,000 iPads in our gym. Our assessment strategies, using Synergy and updating use of gradebook, more into moving back Marathon Kids back into the schools, skill progressions, a curriculum map that will fit all of our learning targets. And again, we know that SEL, again, a large part, but will be a high emphasis as we come back into the schools. Wearables, we would like to phase those in as budget allows. We also realize with a flex school that we will be re-looking at that, because schools that are online PE around the nation most of the time have some kind of wearable to track students' physical activity level. Next slide, please.
So we're going to split this one up a little, and I'll cover the first part with budget. And again, we reporting on budget implications for the adoption. Obviously, the budget situation's in a significant different place now than it was in February of last year. And so a couple of things that are impacting the implementation timeline and then therefore the budget. One, it is just the availability and the stability of the state school fund, and then therefore, of course, our general fund and what resource can be allocated throughout the system. But I think another interesting piece is exactly what Cheryl was just speaking of. When we first went into CDL, we had decided to just completely pause on any purchasing of wearables, kind of for the obvious reason that we're not going to be in contact with our students. And then as we have entered into this and learned, the online PE world really does use wearables and does and quite well and quite successfully. And there's models really throughout the country that do that. And so we're needing to kind of figure out how the long-term online solution of BSD Flex will be, and then depending on how long we're in CDL as a system, what we can continue to do to support that program. And so the full budget won't be realized probably as quickly as we wanted, but we'll phase it in over time as resources allow and as our instructional model continues. And Cheryl's just going to wrap it up with just a few more examples of those resources and some shifts, and then we'll take any questions that you have.
Yeah, so we have discussed wearables, but again, looking at that for that online school. One thing that we were in meetings last winter about that normally aren't so much part of the adoption, but meetings with Carl Mead about the use of projectors and just how much technology has changed in our physical education to meet our learning targets, that we use those. Ironically, when we hit CDL, we know that I just can't imagine PE teachers or myself being able to go back to not being able to use a projector. It enhances our teaching so much in physical education. Microphone is going to be really important as people are distance and hearing and large classes in large spaces. And we will also need to really evaluate our physical spaces as we move again for the potential of hybrid and fully returning. So we do see maybe some priority changes. Also, obviously, equipment will be a long range goal to really get equity across our district in the way of equipment. But just as Brian has just said, that timeline may look different and our priorities may look a little bit different. I also just really wanted to take the opportunity to thank Dawn and the school board for maintaining physical education as a core class. We have one of the best teams. I know we have the best team in the state. We have 54 elementary PE teachers strong that have created and collaborated weekly since April. And I just couldn't be prouder of them. They have worked so hard to meet not only the physical health and well-being of our students, but also the social emotional. So we're really appreciative to have that chance to be on Zoom with them, to be live with them, and to maintain that relationship that will be so vital as we come back to class. We have over 20,000 miles logged in less than a month of Marathon Kids. We have so many kids eager and willing to log those miles. Anything we can do to make that connection with families, which is what Marathon Kids are doing, I'm just really excited about. So thank you.
And Dawn, it looks like you had a comment, and then we'll take any questions.
Yes, I just wanted to say, well, thank you, Cheryl and Brian, but I wanted to say that I was happy to have been part of the PE project team. I learned a great deal from the meetings. I learned about wearables and the use of technology. I learned how physical education develops students' competence and confidence to take part in a range of physical activities that become central part of their lives, both in and out of school. I learned how regular participation in physical activity and higher levels of physical fitness have been linked to improved academic performance and brain functions such as attention and memory. These brain functions are the foundations for learning. So I just wanted to say that the timing could not be any better to approve the physical education curriculum now that we see our way beyond COVID.
Great.
Thank you, Donna.
Any other questions from board members? Well, we appreciate you being here this evening, and thank you for your patience. This has been a long road here, so thank you so much for, and Cheryl, your advocacy for PE. It comes through on the screen, it comes through in person, it comes through everywhere. So we're very fortunate to have your enthusiasm and your advocacy on behalf of our students. So thank you for being here with us this evening. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So.
I've got a quick comment, Becky.
Okay.
I just want to say that I appreciated when Cheryl said that PE is a core class, because I believe that too. And it's so great to hear that and to see the district moving forward with this adoption.
I think our legislature also has a little bit agrees that it's a core class as well. So, all right, thank you. All right, now we're going to move to action items. And first up on action items is our middle school boundary with the superintendent's recommendation. So Superintendent, will give you the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. As you know, last month we presented my middle school boundary recommendation to you. I've had it for some time, so we've been answering questions along the way. My recommendation has not changed and would ask for your support. Tonight, we have Dr. Mead, our demographer here, as well as Stephen Sparks and Ken Struckmeyer, who is our executive director of middle schools. Also, I just want to take once again the opportunity to thank our committee. This committee went over a year and tackled this problem, and they stayed with it through a pandemic. It was a very diverse committee, and they just did an outstanding job. I want to thank our community for showing up in force and their responses, both during in-person and during COVID. And finally, want to thank our staff. This has been a long road, and all the staff that were involved in it, facilitated by Steve Sparks. I want to thank you for your commitment, and we are here to answer any questions. I could go through this again, but I believe you've had it for some time. The community has had it for some time, and so would entertain any questions and then ask for your support.
All right, board members, anybody have any questions of the staff? Any comments they want to make?
I guess I'll just make a comment before I give my vote. People know where I stand on this, but Carol Belden said in her Equity and Equality series that equality is leaving the door open for anyone who has the means to approach it, and equity is a pathway to that door to those who need it. The proposed boundary places roadblocks in that pathway for marginalized students by further concentrating homeless students on free and reduced lunch into 2 middle schools. Mountain View specifically will open when returned to in-person learning with a wave of high risk and high need students coming out of COVID remote learning requiring additional resources, thereby creating a situation where staff is overwhelmed, addressing the social emotional needs of these students in learning gaps. We cannot change where we live. We cannot change where poverty is concentrated, but we can change the amount of poverty concentration. So this is why I vote no on the middle school boundary.
Anne, it looks like you have a comment.
I do. I guess the first thing I would like to do is acknowledge that discussing the middle school boundary and opening a middle school at a time when schools are closed is frankly surreal. At the same time, I recognize that this committee has worked a long time in order to put forth a recommendation, and that it is the board's responsibility to vote on that so that questions can be put aside as far as where the boundary is, as far as we know, should schools open, which I know we all hope that they will very soon. One of the boundary committee members wrote us today. It happens to be somebody who I have met with on many occasions as in support of her work on the boundary process. And I wanted to just read some of her remarks, which I know went to all of us today, because I think they summarize many of my thoughts. She says, bottom line, I am not happy with the map. Problems exist. And then these are her words. Poor schools are remaining poor, and there are still crowded schools. Nevertheless, I voted for the map with a lot of apprehension and dissatisfaction. It is I agree with her in many ways. I find, I'm not in love with this solution. At the same time, upon my review, I believe that the objectives as specified by the board have been met, and that the criteria that we have asked the committee to consider have been considered and applied. I can imagine a school board in the future deciding that walkability was the priority that would be dictated for this boundaries should they need to be refreshed at a future date. I could also imagine that the board might give very specific guidance about how poverty would be concentrated at some schools rather than at others. I do not believe that this board did this. And in addition, the middle school boundary map is consistent with schools throughout our district at this time, where I think I know my fellow board members enough to know that none of us are satisfied that we have some schools with high degrees of poverty and others that have not. That is true at every level in our school district, and a great concern to this board. So I guess in summary, I do believe that the objectives have been met and that the criteria were considered, which is what the board's charge is on this decision. I would also like to clarify what we are voting on and what we are not. We are voting, my understanding is, on the middle school boundary adjustment and not where special programs are placed, which would be at the discretion of the superintendent in order to further balance some of these other outstanding issues should the district staff find a recommendation that was important to meet capacity needs or other objectives of the district.
Any other questions or comments from board members?
I have a comment, Becky. I wrote something out and it's a little long, so I apologize to my fellow board members, but I feel like these are important thoughts. I want to thank the members of the Boundary Adjustment Advisory Committee for their hard work on behalf of the whole Beaverton community. Boundary decisions are difficult in normal times. With the COVID-19 pandemic interrupting the committee's work, I want to extend extra appreciation for the difficult conditions committee members worked under. I want to also thank Superintendent Grotting for his consideration of the boundaries. I appreciate his commitment to providing schools with high free and reduced lunch rates with additional supports, and we'll be looking forward to hearing more about these supports in the budget process. I want to honor the work done by the group of committee members who came together to struggle with the multiple competing concerns, listen to robust community input, synthesize large data sets, draw and redraw the boundary map, and after much debate, arrive at the current map. I believe the committee has achieved the charge provided in the June 24th, 2019 board objective, and will be voting yes tonight to support this boundary decision. Every time the district engages in a large public process, we learn how we can better serve our community and strengthen decision-making processes. I have two areas of focus I hope will be addressed in future board boundary objectives: defining a district goal or guidelines for student body composition, and more actively seeking community input. I'm concerned that the JC factor, student body composition, is not well defined, nor is there a clearly articulated goal for student body composition. Factors such as neighborhood proximity or clean feeders are clear. We want students to attend schools that are close to their homes and ensure that groups of students matriculate to the same school. But what is the goal for student body composition? When approaching deliberations about student body composition, is the committee to look solely at free and reduced lunch eligibility rates or other factors such as demographics and number of homeless students? What does the current research tell us regarding student composition and student achievement? Are there tipping point percentages when student body composition has a stronger influence on student achievement? How much can additional resources and strategies balance increases in underserved student populations in a school? What guidelines ensure we can center the needs of underserved students and communities when making boundary decisions? Answering these questions and providing future committees with more specific guidance can ensure that the district has an even stronger equity focus in future boundary adjustments. To be capable of providing this focus, we should strongly consider convening a work group to make recommendations ahead of any future adjustment processes. I'm also concerned about outreach in areas of the district that have not historically had high participation in boundary decisions. The boundary process had a large amount of community input, but most of it was focused in the northern part of the district. Every boundary decision involves a trade-off between the different JC factors. Knowing how the community members directly affected by changes view these trade-offs can provide needed direction. In the future, I hope we take an even more proactive stance towards community input, utilizing focused listening sessions, community-specific surveys, and direct parent outreach to ensure we hear from community voices across the district. It's not enough to provide a venue for community voices. If we are missing the voices of large swaths of the district, we must find new strategies for engagement. Having made these suggestions, I want to reiterate that I believe the committee has met the charge provided by the board, and I offer these suggestions for future improvement. Thank you to everyone who participated in the boundary decision, committee members, educators, administrators, parents, students, and community members.
Any other board comments? I have a few comments to make, and that is, first of all, I want to thank our community for stepping up. Democracy is messy, and we asked our community members to volunteer and be a part of an over a year-long process where they met every month until the pandemic hit, trying to work out what was best for our community. Our board gave 2 objectives with the staff, and that was to create an attendance boundary for a new middle school that was built long before a pandemic, that had been used as a swing school and was going to be scheduled to be open this next fall. And we needed to populate that new middle school. And then also it was to reduce enrollment at Stoller Middle School, where it was over 600 students, and we asked them to reduce that to a 90% permanent capacity. Those were the 2 objectives that we gave them, all within the boundaries of policy JC that we as a board have agreed to as our policy. And looking at that policy JC, which I looked at almost every single month as I was watching the committee do their work, there were 4 factors, and these 4 factors said they may include, not that they had to include, but they may include. And I watched this committee try in every way to include these 4 factors. Student body composition, as we've already talked about, that may be something that we need to better define because it is so important to our student enrollment. Current and future availability of space of a school. We have so many schools that are over capacity and then those that are under, and we just seem to watch the ebb and flow in different parts of our district. Feeder patterns from elementary, middle, and high school. And we think that's easily defined, but our schools don't come in nice little Lego pieces that this one elementary school and this second elementary school fit perfectly into the next middle school. We have to divide schools, and how do we decide which ones are divided and which of our community that's used to be in one another has all of these are hard decisions because it does not come in simple answers. It is complex answers. And then finally, neighborhood proximity and accessibility. We all have different definitions in our community. What is that neighborhood proximity? Is it where we shop? Is it where we play sports? Is it where we go to church? Is it where we are able to walk to? What exactly is that? We have different perspectives on what that means. So our committee took all of those things and tried to sculpt a perfect answer, and there was no perfect answer. For every single time they tried one thing, something else came in, and those 4 things started competing with one another. But this committee tried to do their best. They tried to take a scalpel to something that you really could not take a scalpel to. And I appreciate their hard work. And when I look at our community that came together to try to do what was best for students, and even though what may be best for this one student may be different than from another student. They did try to do their best. But my last remark is, if we truly believe as a board that it is our job as to look at equity and make our schools more equitable, we need to be spending our time talking to our city leaders, our county leaders, and our state leaders, because this is a job much bigger than us deciding boundaries. This is about just helping our community build housing that is affordable throughout our district. It is about finding ways that our families that cannot afford to live in single dwelling homes, to live in apartments or not have any place to live in a shelter. We need to work with all of our leaders if that's truly what we believe, because that is the only way we will find any sort of balance in equity, not by moving every year or every 5 years or every 10 years, because it's an impossible thing to do, because we can't, as Donna already said, we can't tell people where to live. So with that, I will be supporting, because I do believe this committee, and I do believe that the superintendent met the objectives of what we needed to do with the middle school boundaries. And with that, Leanne, I will call on you to make a motion.
I move that we confirm that the objectives for the middle school attendance boundary adjustment have been met, and that the policy JC was considered. And I further recommend that we approve the middle school attendance boundary adjustment as recommended by Superintendent Grotting.
Is there a second?
I second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the superintendent's boundary adjustments, and that policy JC were satisfactorily considered, and the staff really recommended the board to approve the middle school attendance boundary adjustment. I will be calling the board members. You can answer by saying yay, nay, or abstain. And Brian?
Aye.
Susan Greenberg?
Aye.
Leanne Larson?
Aye.
Eric Simpson?
Aye.
Donna Tyner?
Nay, no.
Vice Chair Tom Collette?
Aye.
And Board Chair Becky Timchek votes aye. With the motion passes 6-1. Next order of business is our second reading of policy ACB, All Students Belong. We heard from our staff earlier that this is a state recommendation that needs to be passed by January 1, and we're using an OSBA policy so that then we can further be looking at the policy to make regional and local changes. Are there any questions to the second reading of policy ACB? Leanne?
I move that we approve policy ACB.
I second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve policy ACB. Again, I will be calling the roll, and you can signify by saying aye, nay, or abstain. And Brian?
Aye.
Susan Greenberg?
Aye.
Leanne Larson?
Aye.
Eric Simpson?
Aye.
Donna Tyner?
Aye.
Vice Chair Tom Collette?
Aye.
And Board Chair Becky Timchek vote aye. With that, the motion passes 7-0. The next order of business is to appoint budget committee members to fill vacancies. Mr. Schofield, would you like to tell us who the lucky winners we have tonight of joining our budget committee?
Thank you, Chair Timchuk. I appreciate it. As you may recall, a few months ago, we brought to you forward a couple of budget committee openings for Zone 1 and Zone 2. Went through a process of advertising those openings, and I would actually like to let Director Greenberg and Director Bryan express how they convince folks to be brave souls and join our budget committee. So I'll leave it to you, directors, to go ahead.
Well, I was going to say with Zone 1, Zone 1 was lucky enough to have Jason. I'm sorry. Here's what I found. All of a sudden, Siri's coming up on my watch. Sorry about that. Jason, and I can't remember his last name. I hate to say it.
Hohenbaum.
Thank you. And he not only has worked in our school district as a teacher, but he currently is a vice principal in the Sheridan School District. And he's also engaged, I think, in the planning. So he's very engaged in our school district and what's happening all around. So I'm pretty excited. I had a great conversation with him. Excited for him to be a budget committee member. Sorry I haven't met him in person, but I had a good conversation with him on the phone. And I think he's going to be a good fit and a good match for our budget committee.
True to form, Zone 2 had quite a few applicants, a high degree of interest for the budget committee position. And I will, side note here, several of the applicants became aware of the opportunity by watching the school board meeting. So that is, I think, a first with us being on Zoom, a new degree of awareness from this forum. I'm pleased that Farah was an applicant. She is an engaged community member, both with her employer, as well as a longtime member of the Bethany community. Many of her children have made their way, all successful graduates of the Beaverton School District, and she has 2 children who are still part of the district. Even one of her kids has been a teacher in the district previously. So a longtime community member, equity advocate, speaks multiple languages. I could not be more thrilled that she was an applicant and that she's agreed to step up on behalf of the community. So I wholeheartedly recommend her as a member of this committee.
All right, board members, do we have any questions about our selections or from Mr. Schofield about the budget members? All right, Leanne.
All right, I move that we approve Jason Hohenbaum for Zone 1 as a budget committee member and Farah Muhammad in Zone 2 as a budget committee member.
I second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve Jason Hohenbaum for Zone 1 and Farah Muhammad in Zone 2 to our budget committee. I will call the roll and signify by saying aye, nay, or abstain. And Brian?
Aye.
Susan Greenberg?
Aye.
Leanne Larson?
Aye.
Eric Simpson?
Aye.
Donna Tyner?
Aye.
Vice Chair Tom Collette?
Aye.
Chair Becky Timchuk votes aye. With that, the motion passes 7-0. Congratulations, new budget members. We look forward to seeing you starting in January. So that is great. All right. Next order of business, Leanne.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll of board members, signify by saying aye, nay, or abstain. And Brian?
Aye.
Susan Greenberg?
Aye.
Leanne Larson?
Aye.
Eric Simpson?
Aye.
Donna Tyner?
Aye.
Vice Chair Tom Collette?
Aye.
And Chair Becky Timchuk votes aye. The motion passes to accept the consent agenda 7-0. Next order of business, is there any board communication this evening? I will just say, I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday with their family and everybody stays safe and healthy. And we'll look forward to seeing you all next year. And I do hope that there is a time that we all get to actually see each other in person in the near future. So with that, Superintendent Grotting, do you have anything for the good of the order?
Just thank you to this entire board for leading the school district through some very difficult situations, issues as we go forward. We have a lot more to go through, but appreciate each and every one of you.
All right, with that, the next school board meeting will be Tuesday, mark your calendars, not Monday, Tuesday, January 19th, 2021 at 6:30. It will be on Zoom. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. And board members, if you could all stick around for executive session, that would be appreciated.